Welcome everyone to the fifth session of Grad App Wars. आज का session is going to be about writing, so it's called Writing Your Way to Victory. इसमें we'll be covering resumes, SOPs, and personal statements. We have an amazing panel of alumni on board. Um, Nothing I say can do justice to everything they've done, so I'll just ask them to introduce themselves. Since I see Fakia first, Fakia, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi guys, my name is Fakia Iqbal. I'm from the CS batch of 2019. While I was at LUMS, I worked mainly with Dr. Mubin Javed and Sir Suleiman Shahid on usable security and privacy, and one of my main interests was internet measurements as well. Two of my projects were on internet measurements. I applied to universities in the US, in Canada, and in Europe. So kind of an all rounder in that in that area. In US, I applied to Georgia Tech, Purdue, Northeastern, John Hopkins, and I got in all of them. I was later told by Sir Fareed that I should have aimed higher, but I have no regrets about that. It's fine. In Canada, I applied to UBC, University of British Columbia, and I got in, and that is where I am right now. Uh, I didn't get into ETH Zurich, which is ETH, more commonly pronounced as ETH. I didn't get into ETH, and again, I have no regrets. I applied mostly to interdisciplinary programs in the US, mostly information security and security and privacy programs. For Georgia Tech, I applied to a policy program. But in the end, I decided to go to UBC, which is basically a master's with thesis in computer science. That is the only purely computer science program I applied to, and I ended up going there, which is, I don't know what to say about that. So I did go to Vancouver at the start of this year, but I found myself in a plane back to Pakistan just 3 weeks later because of some family emergency. But right now, I'm taking online classes. I sleep at 6 a.m., wake up at 2 p.m. I'm basically on Vancouver time. So yeah, that's it. That's about it.
Thank you, Fakia. Aksa, would you like to take over?
Hi everyone, I'm Aksa. I'm currently doing a PhD in network security at CMU, and I applied to like 8 universities. I think it was a good distribution of universities from rank 1 to rank 60, and I didn't get into Stanford, and I got into all the other universities. I I think I applied to USC, I applied to UCSD, I applied to I don't even remember the names now. Uh, I mean, it's been 4 years. I applied to I think Boston, Stony Brook, University of Michigan Ann Arbor, Wisconsin Medicine. I think, yeah, I think
No,
this is the distribution of, and I'm not sure what else to tell.
no, it's fine. It's
Yeah.
completely fine. We'll get to know you more with the talk. Saad, would you like to go next?
Hi, my name is Saad Hassan. I graduated in 2019. During LUMS, I did projects on language acquisition technologies and also behavioral technologies. Where did I go to study afterward? So currently I'm doing a PhD. I'm a second year PhD student at Rochester Institute of Technology. I have not graduated yet. And then there's this question that where are we there where we thought we would be during senior year? So depends on which point in time in senior year talking about. So before the application, no, I did not know I could have been anywhere. But after the application, yeah, I was pretty clear on where I would be. I got in touch with my current advisor pretty early, so sometime around like December and January. So we had a back and forth between each other. We had a lot of meetings, so I ended up committing pretty early and did not apply to a lot of places. I applied to like 5 places, out of which 3 I got into. So yeah, that's my introduction.
That's great to hear, Saad. Larab has joined us. Larab, would you like to go next?
Hello, Assalamualaikum. Sorry for the late joining. So my name is Larib. I'm from the 2013 CS batch, and I finished my PhD from Stony Brook University. this year in January. I was doing my research in computational biology and bioinformatics, but I was in the CS department. I finished my PhD this year and I'm now working in Boston in a pharmaceutical company. And when I was applying, I applied, so I graduated in 2013. I applied at that time to about 10 universities. I didn't get into any of them. Then I applied in the winter session again to about 4 universities. Like मैंने बीच में अपनी I updated my SOP and everything. I didn't do any research in that time, and then I reapplied and I got into Stony Brook and two other places, and then I joined Stony Brook. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Larab. You'll be like really useful to us because हम भी अभी messed up SOPs वाले phase में हैं, and then you could like help us fix our SOPs. Okay, Kandil, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'm Kandil. I graduated in 2016 and I applied to 6 places in total. Like Fakya, I was interested in interdisciplinary programs mostly. Um, I liked CS, but not enough to fully 100% focus on it. I wanted something that complements the CS skills with something else. So the programs that I applied to were mostly focused on public policy and education, but they had technical aspects to it. So in the end, the masters that I ended up doing, which I can tell you a little bit about, but the masters that I ended up doing was CS heavy in the sense that I took all the ML and NLP courses that were available, but the projects that I did for those classes were focused on like a social good kind of space, education and health. The places I applied to were Stanford, MIT, UC Berkeley, CMU, what else? U Chicago, uh, and there was one more that I'm blanking out on. But I got and Harvard, and I got into 5 of them. I did not get into the TPP program at MIT. It's I forgot what the acronym stands for, but something like public policy or something. That's the only one I did not end up getting into, and the one that I went with was learning design and technology at Stanford. It was a program in which you had to take classes from the School of Education and Computer Science. It really depended on you, to be honest. The components were learning design and tech, so a lot of people also went into tech and design, which after which they ended up as a UI UX designers. I focused on the L and T part, which is learning and tech, and I did mostly like ed tech related projects. After that, I did some research in Stanford in the School of Medicine. Again, that was an interdisciplinary thing between CS and I would say like kind of medicine, but like I analyzed video data to automatically extract features to diagnose autism in children. And then I am now working at Amazon as a research scientist, again, mostly focused on the machine learning and data science side of things. But yes, and yeah, we can go into detail in case students have any questions. One thing I want to clarify is that we to all the participants we will be leaving our contact info, and I can speak for myself that I'll be more than happy to help you guys with your SOPs, your resumes. I know this was a very challenging year, so kudos to all of you for still persevering and applying and all. And I know this process can be daunting, so we'll all be here to help you through this.
Thank you, Kandil. We're probably going to set up a Slack channel for you guys ताकि वो to ease this out. But thank you so much, all of you, for being here and waking up early for us. Um, we Saad asked for a poll. If you guys haven't filled that yet, we're giving you just 1 minute. एक poll है chat में, उसको जरा fill out कर दें so our panelists know कि क्या division है masters versus PhD की in our attendees. And then Haram can share the results in like a minute.
Should we still continue anyway, and we can save that maybe towards the Q&A side, because we still have to cover all slides regardless,
Okay.
right?
Okay, so the agenda is कि शुरू में आप लोगों को एक general overview देंगे panelists with a set of slides. They'll have all the pointers in them for both resume and SOP. We're going to start with resumes because that's a shorter section. We'll be looking over slides, and once we're done with the slides, we can have some Q&A, and all our panelists could show us some samples of good SOPs. Sorry, resumes. Sorry. Saad, can you go and share the screen with everybody?
Sure. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
All right. Give me one sec. All right. So from the poll, what we observed was that there was a decent split in terms of the number of people who are trying to pursue a PhD and also a master's. And then there were a bunch of people who said that they would want to pursue both PhD and master's once they graduate or in their senior year. So this particular section which I'll focus on, which is writing an academic CV, this is not just relevant for PhD applicants. It might also be relevant for students who are doing a master's, but which is a research oriented master's, where they would be joined with an advisor at their university. So first thing, why is the CV important? There are a few reasons for it, particularly for PhD and research-oriented masters. Your CV is a good chance for your the committee at the university that you're applying to, and also your potential advisors to sort of look at your research progress. Where do you stand? What are the projects that you did? What are the other methods that you have used in your previous research and how you can apply to those in the future. But why it's also particularly important for PhD applications is that it is used for an advisor applicant matchmaking. So what essentially happens is that there are often two committees in the universities that you apply to. In the first committee, they just scan through the applications to sort of see what's the minimum criteria that they want a candidate to fulfill in order to be qualified enough. But the second thing, so the first criteria is usually pretty liberal, but it depends on the university. It still is pretty liberal. So a lot of applications do end up going to the second part. But there are, from what I know, there are a lot of rejections on the second part because the applicant is usually unable to sort of convey that they have a particular line of research or a focus or a research focus that they want to pursue, which does not enable the committee at the university to sort of match them with one advisor or a bunch of other advisors who would be interested in taking them as their students. So your academic CVs are very important for this applicant advisor matchmaking as well. Which brings us to our second point. So one thing that an academic CV for a PhD student, in my opinion, should really have is a strong statement that sort of indicates your research interests. So if you have worked on a bunch of projects at LUMS, try to think of umbrella terms that sort of cover all of those research interests. These could be somewhere between 1 to 3. So for instance, if you worked on network security, you can just put my research interest is network security. But if it's a bunch of different things, like 2 or 3 different things, then you can put my research interest on network security, and then internet measurements, and then networks, and then you can put like 2 or 3. But do not make it too vague. That if you have done projects in a lot of different areas, don't make it like my research interests are this, this, this. It's fine to be a little vague. You can put something that's tangential from something, but don't make it too vague that they do not have an idea of where you're headed with your research in the future. The second point is education. So it's for applicants to PhD, since you guys would be applying right after your bachelor's, it's fine to put both your high school results and your undergrad. But just mention the university's name. I will go through a couple of examples of CVs later on, but just put the university name, your GPA if you want to put it, and then that will be pretty much it. Maybe your advisor name at the start. Some people tend to put it at the end, but others tend to put it at the start as well. So yeah, that's there. The next thing is research publications, and then there's research experience. There's a trade-off between these two here. So essentially, so while you're in your undergrad, only a very few people would have publications under their belt to any of the conferences. Some of you might have submitted papers, but which have not been published yet, or some of you are just thinking of sort of submitting to some venues. But a lot of you would have some degree of research experience by the time that you do apply to your PhD programs. So for applicants who are in their undergrad, it's fine to not put this research publications section altogether if you do not have them. But the trade-off between these two is that if you have research publications that you can point to, then it should be more research publications and less research experience. But if you do not have research publications, then you have to talk about your research experience at a decent length. So I will talk about this later on when I show an example. But as you progress in your career and you start having more and more publications, then the research experience section becomes closer and smaller and smaller, because you can point to specific publications to sort of show that research experience. Next thing is teaching experience. So for PhDs, most of you would most of you would have the role of graduate research assistant at the universities that you get accepted to, but some of you would have to teach courses in order to fund your PhD, in order to get stipend as well, depending on where the university is, how their funding system works, and all of that. So for that, it is crucial to put your teaching experience there as well, which would be teaching assistantships that you did, or maybe if you were a fellow somewhere else, or whatever kind of teaching experience that you had, you need to put that there as well. Next thing would be courses. So this is something important. So this is something that I did not have in my undergrad CV, which I thought CV that I had at the end of my undergrad, which I thought would not be required. They can just go to my transcript and look at the courses that I had took. But I think it's very important to mention at least some of the courses that you have taken, which are sort of directly aligned with your research interests. So don't put like introduction to computational problem solving, or like very introductory courses, or don't put like courses which won't be related in any way, like principles of accounting or something. But for the courses that are at least some way aligned with your research, you can put a bunch. You can put like 7 to 10 courses there. uh, you can even mention, so if you have a smaller list, then you can even mention the instructors that you took these courses with. And you would be surprised that that in US, a lot of your universities and in a lot of places, the faculty are familiar with some of the professors who are teaching at LUMS. So that could be there as well. Next section is research and technical skills. If you have employed any particular research methodologies, if you've used any tools, you can mention them there. In the technical skills, you can put something like the programming languages that you've used, other tools that you've used. This really depends on your research, but you can put a section on that as well. Finally, there's something called course projects that I've put here. So now this is again, so initially I said that there's a trade-off between research publications and research experience. Then there's also a trade-off between course projects and also your research experience. So where do you qualify a project to be a research project as opposed to just a course project? So if you went beyond the realms of a course and even did slightly more than what the requirement of the course was, or continue to pursue it over the summer or later on, it's fine to put that in research experience section. But for the other projects in which there was no research angle at all, or it just fulfilled the requirements of a particular course, you should put them in course projects, which can sort of be a place where you can show off your other skills. Like, for instance, if you were leading a group, then you can put that here. Basically, you can show off your other skills. You can show off your programming skills. You can show off your data analysis skills, which wouldn't directly contribute to some line of research, but would still be useful to have in your toolkit once you're pursuing research. So this is where all your software engineering projects, what else? Your early projects from like maybe CS. I don't know if CS 300 has a project now, but like your 200 to 300 level courses, all of those would go in. The final thing is your references. So your advisor's detail, their email, name definitely has to be there. But you can also put 2 or 3 other people if you have strong ties with them, who, if the committee is out to, would be willing to reply and sort of have a back and forth with. So these are some of the things that I wanted to talk about. I would let the next speaker talk about academic CVs or master's application, and then we'll do internship.
Sath, I want to add a few things.
Sure. Go.
Can you go to the previous slide?
Yeah.
So in respect to the courses he mentioned, when Sath said that mention your relevant courses, it doesn't have to be. I mean, I know that if you have taken financial accounting, then it's actually not relevant at all. But if you, let's say you're applying to systems or networking, and you have taken computer vision or computer graphics, these are still advanced courses, and you should mention it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, most of the times when you're applying for a PhD, these things matter a lot. For instance, I took human computer interaction course. There I conducted user studies, and that was considered very valuable for my PhD experience, because user studies is something that you can actually employ in other fields as well. So I would say mention computer vision or computer graphics, human computer interactions, network security, even, I mean, all these advanced courses which are CS related. You can also mention courses like game theory, because they have somewhat some relation with the computer science. And with respect to what Saad mentioned, that it's very unlikely that you will have research publications at this level. I had a lot of friends who did not have research publications, and they got good PhD admissions in the top 20 universities actually. So normally what I do in my CV is that if you don't have research publications, then you want to list all your projects, including some of your course projects. I'm not talking about your operating systems assignment. That is not a project you would want to list on your CV. So normally what I do is I have a general section of projects, and there I prioritize with respect to, if let's say it's a PhD CV, I would first start with research projects, which of these are the most relevant to the place where I'm applying. And then I'll move on to other projects which were kind of in the gray area. They had a research component, but they were actually course projects. For instance, this HCI course, I conducted user studies, solved an unknown problem. So research is whenever you solve an unknown problem for which a solution doesn't exist. So it could be a new study that you are conducting and no one has done that study. This is research. So what I would do is I would start with the most relevant to the program that I'm applying, and then I will, and also rank with respect to what are my contributions in that project. How much did I contribute? And based on that, I will rank the projects and sort of combine the research and course projects to not make too many separate sections. And also because sometimes it's not really clear if this is a research project or not.
Yeah. To briefly add to that, my thought is if you don't have something to put in one of these sections, try and mold it around. Like, these are not set in stone. So just, mold your CV according to what you have, and don't worry if you don't have like teaching experience or something similar. Like just mold them. Also, this is longer. So mine was 3 pages. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think there's a very hard length limit on this. For PhD applications, I'm not sure if that's still
right.
And also, sorry, Saad, continue.
So I had a final concluding remark. I'll just say it at the end. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that it's okay to customize your CV for every place you apply to.
Yeah, that's what I was.
So carefully look at what group you're applying to, what the professor's interests are, what are the continuous, don't look at their 1990s projects. Look at what they are working on recently, and then try to highlight those skills which
Mm,
actually might be useful for those projects. For instance, it could be possible that the person is doing a project which has a link with economics and you have taken
mm,
principle of economics course, and then it would be worthwhile to mention it.
mhm, mhm,
So actually customize your CV with respect to the place you're applying to and
mm,
highlight those skills. You should have a list of professors that you are interested
mm,
in for a particular university. You should have looked at their at least past 5 years publications. I'm not saying that read their publications. You should know what is the general area they're working on.
mm.
And then based on that, tailor your CV so that it highlights those skills which if the person reads your CV, will think, oh, this would be a useful skill to add to my group.
That's an excellent point that Akshay raised here. So, from my experience, what I would say is that there were some projects that I did not even take in the CS department. So, there was a project that I did during my social psychology course that I ended up putting in my CV at a relatively higher level of priority, just for particular applications, so that again I can target specific advisors and specific labs. So, that's very important that you modify your CV for each of the different places that you apply to, and sort of reprioritize different things based on the labs that you're interested in or the advisor that you want to work with. Yeah, so that's an excellent point. So next on the list is academic CV for master's applications. I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen, and whoever was doing this can share their screen.
I can share mine. And Fakya, I know you also applied to master's program, so feel free to jump in whenever you
Yeah, I
want.
think I was thinking I would just show my CV as an example after you guys are done with the with both of these, because mine is a master's with thesis, which is sort of which is sort of halfway between a PhD and a master's.
Okay,
So
sounds good. Can everyone see my screen right now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. So, sorry, let me move this. Basically, let me just walk through. Honestly, a lot of things have already been covered by Saad, Akshay, and Lare, but let me walk through a little bit on what is slightly different in master's applications. The sections are pretty much similar. Again, I would say that do highlight relevant coursework. Like Aksa said, things that you think are irrelevant could be relevant as well. But I think overall, the projects that the courses that in which you genuinely feel you learned a lot and that are also relevant to the space that you're applying in, it's nice mentioning them. It's not important if you feel that the rest of your resume, like your projects and your research work and work experience, is a lot more interesting and adds more value. Then you can skip on like using space on these. But similar to this, again, this is not the resume that I used when I was applying for my grad school. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it. But over here, I have like just highlighted them. I was applying for a job, and like these are the courses that made sense according to the job. So I just like mentioned my degree, when I finished it, and the relevant coursework that I thought was helpful for the job posting I was applying for. But it would be similar, like if you're applying for an MSCS, and if you have like a certain thing that you want to focus on in your SOP, for example, like maybe your research project or your final year thesis project was in networks or something, then I would mention my networks classes first, and then like just in order of priority, like most important to least important kind of thing. Obviously not all. And then yeah, in the research work or projects, I highly recommend that regardless of PhD or masters, you should try to follow the method somewhat. Not because it's like a method that like you just need to follow it, and it's just a linear thing that bas karna hai, but more because like from the perspective of the person who's reading your resume, no matter how learned they are in their area of specialty, they might not know much about what you did research in. So it's important to not assume that the reader would automatically understand what you're talking about. So the star method just helps you stay a little more coherent. And what I'll talk about the star method after this, and I'll also give an example of something I wrote in my resume using the star method. But one important thing is that just the reader should know that what problem you were trying to solve, and the reader should also know what you achieved in terms of a quantitative result. And yeah, I can talk about it in more detail later. And then work experience, similarly, if you have any internships or something you did outside of LUMS also matters when it comes to master's applications, because most people who apply to masters do not, like in PhD, you're explicitly expressing interest in academia, which is not the case in masters. So your work experience outside of research also matters. So if you did any freelance work or any software engineering, like if you're applying for CS, any software engineering internships, etc., stuff like that, that totally matters. Skills, again, not super important. You can easily highlight your skills through the research work or projects you're talking about by explicitly stating what like tech you use. Like maybe you can mention, like, use C++ in this project, or you use Python or machine learning or NLP or whatever. And that way you don't have to explicitly like spell out what skills you have. They would be implicit in your resume. But that's that's another thing. In my opinion, the master's resume or like CV should not be more than 1 page. And that's my opinion, just because I felt that was when I was in undergrad, most of the things that I did could be condensed in 1 page, and that also forced me to be less verbose and more to the point. This is obviously entirely different in PhD resume, because I expect that over there you have to be a little more you have to explain in more detail what kind of research you did and what the results were and all. So yeah, I think this would be one primary difference between these two. I'm going to quickly walk through the star method as well. As most of you would already know, this was also a question that we got, but it's basically situation, task, action, result. It's just a template that you follow. It doesn't have to be followed in this order necessarily, just that you should sort of check these things off, just that yeah. So I mean, you know what, I'll just like walk through the example that I have over here, because that would make it easier. So this is one project that I did. It was called Rapid Mobilized Video Phenotyping for Autism Diagnosis. And over here, like I've mentioned, the journal in which it was published. And so the situation, and again, I understand that you do not have a lot of space, especially if you're trying to condense things in 1 page. So the situation is sort of explained over here. Like you're trying to diagnose autism through video phenotyping. Phenotyping, as in you're trying to get a phenotypical traits, not genotyping traits, and trying to diagnose autism from that. So that's the situation. The action is built machine learning classifiers for, and then like what was I trying to achieve by that action? I was trying to identify a reduced feature set of behaviors that needed to be measured for autism diagnosis using features extracted from video data. That's also an action. Built a deep learning framework using 3D coordinates to automatically extract features such as child's pose, eye contact, etc. So over here, like I've explained what the situation was, what the task was. Like I was trying to reduce the feature set that is necessary to diagnose something, and then these are the actions that I took. And you would also see that I'm highlighting the technologies that I use. Like this, I mean, again, this was for a job, but I think it could be relevant in case you do not have enough space to highlight skills. But like I mentioned, scikit-learn, pandas, like TensorFlow, PyTorch, like things that would automatically show that, okay, this person knows these things. And then the result, that tested classifiers on a data set with greater than 90% reduction in diagnosis time. In my opinion, it is very important for the results to be quantitative, just because it's a universal way to understand how successful the project was. Um, but if you feel that your project did not necessarily have quantitative results, then try to like spin it in a way that somebody can understand what the impact of all that work was, whether it is in research or whether it is in practical life or whatever.
You got cut off,
Lost
Kandil.
her voice.
Kandil.
Saying that it's, yeah, I don't know where you guys lost me. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we
I think
can
you
now.
were talking
No,
about Scikit pandas, and you were talking about the tools, and then we.
Yeah, so I was just saying that, yeah, like if you can mention, if you do not have enough space in your skills, it's okay to mention the skills or like the tech stack that you used in your projects. That way the reader would automatically know. And then the last thing was that please make sure that your results are something that are universally understandable. Quantitative way is the best way to describe them. But if you think that your project was such that it could not be described quantitatively, for example, if it was an HCI project or something, then still try to explain what the impact was, for all the effort and time that you put into that project. And with that, I think that that covers the CV section for masters and the star method. But we can leave some time for this in the Q&A section in case you guys have more questions.
Yeah,
just
I
And
to
think.
add to that, even for the PhD students, I think the STAR method is really good for listing your projects. Like generally, I think that's a good method for making your CV. So you can refer to that. It's not master specific. Also for the panelists, I think we're getting some questions and answers in the Q&A section. Do you
Yes, I
just
was
want to
going to
type
mention
them,
that.
or should we like do it here?
I think we have a question about adding unpublished research work in your CV. So can one of us show an example? I have an example if that's
I
fine.
do have an example, so I think you
I
can go ahead first, Fakia.
Okay.
Then I can
Go
go.
ahead.
Just
All right.
before we go into the
Share my
Q&A,
screen.
I had one question. जो आपने CV की बात की, Kandir, is this for thesis and non-thesis both? Masters.
Well, yes, I think that it should work for either. I mean, my master's also had a thesis, and I followed pretty much a similar template. But I would second what Aksa and Saad emphasized on earlier, that it is important to mold your resume according to whatever master's program you're applying in. Like, for example, if your master's is thesis specific in a certain, and you're saying in your SOP that you want to focus on a certain field, then you should prioritize those projects accordingly. But otherwise, I think that there shouldn't be a huge difference between the two. Should be pretty similar.
My only question mainly ये था कि yesterday I think Sir Zaid and some people shared their CVs and they applied for master's thesis. So उनकी CV was like 3-4 pages long. But I think you mentioned कि एक page क्यों नहीं चाहिए, तो मेरा main confusion ये थी.
I think that like depend करता है. You mean Zaid Saeed Khan?
Hmm.
Yeah, I think depend करता है कि आपका if you think that you have done a lot of good work, like शायद मैंने इतनी like चौके नहीं मारे थे अपने टेन्योर में जितने उसने मारे होंगे जैद ने, लेकिन अगर आपके पास इतना ज्यादा काम है तो why not? Yeah, like if you feel that you added, क्योंकि like in my opinion it's also important to emphasize on what you contributed in. So there were, if there are some projects इनको like it was more like touch and go type projects, तो फिर उनको इतनी ज्यादा स्पेस देना सेंस नहीं बनता.
Hmm.
But if you think that there were like multiple projects in which your contribution was a lot and you want to exceed the one page thing, then yeah, by all means. But I know that I know a few of my friends also applied for masters with thesis, but their resume was also one page. But on yeah, I mean, one thing I want to be very clear about is कि ये जो हम सब कुछ बोल रहे हैं इनमें से कुछ भी ऐसी चीज नहीं है कि ये बस set in stone है. Mold जो भी हम बातें कर रहे हैं, like mold them according to your situation and your projects, the master's degree that you are applying in. All of this is malleable as long as your resume is clear and a reader can understand like the story of where you're coming from and where the direction in which you're trying to go into. That's fine. ये सारी चीजें सिर्फ आपको help करने के लिए हैं so that you can think clearly and write eloquently. That's all.
Should we go into the Q&A or should I just do the questions जो इन लोगों ने पहले share किए हुए थे? There, I think they'll cover most of the Q&A as well. I was looking at both of them, तो वो cover हो जाएगा उससे भी. Or should we go into the
I
samples
think
first?
I
I
wanted.
think the ones that they've asked right now, we should address them first.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
Okay.
I see that two of you have already answered it. Aksa has answered one question and Saad has answered the other one. To Hira, I just want to say how much do tierships count in experience? Basically, they want to know what was that? Okay, so basically, why they want to know about tierships is that I think Saad mentioned this before as well, that you, in order to support yourself financially, you have to do tierships during your masters as well as during your PhD. So they just want to know whether you have experience with that before or not. It just helps you get tierships in your PhD or your masters. Other than that, I don't think it counts towards work experience as such. So you're fine. You're fine if you do, even if you don't have tiership experiences, and if you do, that's well and good. But it doesn't count as much as other work experience or internships will count.
I want to add something.
Yeah, sure.
So when you're applying for a PhD, sometimes in your recipe you have to mention why PhD. And
Yes.
there you might have to say that, oh, I want to pursue a career in academia. And there your teaching experience is something that is invaluable, because then you can mention that, see, I have done this, I have this teaching experience, and from this, because I really enjoyed it, from this I concluded that yes, I can pursue a career in academia and it really interests me, and that is why I'm applying for a PhD. So I think teaching experience matters when you are applying for PhD, but I had no tiership from LUMS and I got a PhD admission. So it's definitely not a showstopper, but it's not a bad thing. You should mention it on your CV if you have it.
Yes, you definitely should if you have
Can
it,
you
obviously जो कुछ है वो mention तो जरूर करना है. Don't hide anything up your sleeve.
Again, Kandil, can you just highlight the importance of theorships in master's applications as well? Because I think that's what she wanted to know.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would say that, yeah, for me, TAships were important because the program that I applied, I mean, I don't think that I put my TAships in all the resumes that I sent out. I think there were a few resumes in which I did not mention them because it was a little irrelevant. But the program that, and I wanted to use the space for other projects which were more relevant for that degree. But the resume that I used for Stanford, I did mention my TAship because I was trying to make the connection between education and tech, like, and that I liked teaching, and it was a fun experience. So that was helpful for me. But I do think that TAships do not hurt. I would say that they are extremely important if you don't want to, if you're doing like a master's in CS, or even like otherwise, if you want to get TAships to support you financially, like if you want tuition, your tuition covered, or like stipends, etc. So a lot of students from my batch, they applied for MSCS, and then they, as soon as they got offers, they immediately applied for TAships. And then that really helped because the university had their resumes, and they knew that they already had TAship experience. So I think it never hurts unless there is a pressing need to elaborate more on another project that you think is more relevant. But mentioning TAships never hurt because you might as well could do a TAship during your masters to support yourself.
Right. Ahmed Yassin has asked, so from that perspective, there's no difference between tierships and other kinds of teaching experience. Um, Other kinds of teaching experiences could be two things over here. If Ahmed could clarify this, one could be volunteer work, which you should definitely include in your CV, and the other could be that you've been paid to teach. That is, you've been giving tuitions or something like that. You should mention both of them. I think a tiership is better in the sense that it shows that you have experience teaching in a structured environment inside the university. But even other kinds of research experiences, teaching experiences, especially if it's volunteer work, should be mentioned definitely.
Yeah, I think you
Ali,
can mention that. And again, for PhD SOPs, you can, it's very easy to add those in, like, in the application.
yes,
I really enjoyed this volunteer teaching work, so I want to be able to do more of that.
yes.
Go ahead.
Ali
Sorry.
Esker has asked if it's okay to send CVs instead of resumes for MS applications. Ali, there's, as I understand it, resumes are shorter as compared to CVs. And I'm sure the university will have specified what they're looking for, and usually universities will specify the length of the CV that they're looking for as well. For example, some of the applications I filled out, they had said that the CV should not be longer than 1 page. So they'll specify that, I'm sure. And if they haven't specified it, then either way, it's fine. I think I should just share CV. Just
While Fakia is doing that, I just have one more
yeah.
question. Um, this wasn't sort of mentioned right now, but something I did in my CV was highlight the extracurricular activities as well, like societies and stuff. I don't know if everybody does that or if you encourage that, if anybody has something to do that.
I did that when I
Yeah,
applied for PhD as well. There was a small section at the end, but so I think it might be fine to put it. If there's something that sets you apart from other people in any of the qualities, then you should put it. I removed it once I got into PhD, but I think it's fine to put it here. Others might have
yeah.
other.
And another thing, please do your CVs in LaTeX, because the people who are reading it, they can tell the difference between something that's whipped up off an online site, or if you just converted a Google Doc into PDF, they can tell. So please
Yep.
do it in LaTeX. And it obviously, if you're applying for a CS degree, then definitely you should know LaTeX, and it should be done in LaTeX. Okay,
Unless
with this,
you're very elegant with some other platform, you should definitely use LaTeX.
yes.
I'm
And
going
if
to do a
you're if
small
you're
tutorial of
trying to
LaTeX.
be a little artsy with it, especially if it's part of your
Yeah,
portfolio for an HCI program
Mhm.
or something like that,
Yeah.
then it's fine to be artsy.
yeah.
But other than that,
I did. So I did mine in like Word last minute and made it into a PDF, and I'm not proud of that CV. So it's a good idea to make a CV. Plus, you can in the future this will help you. Once you have a latex template, you can very easy
yes,
manipulate it. Now I have a latex CV and it's very easy to work with it.
So
So yeah,
yeah.
that's encouraged. It's a
after
one-time effort.
Mhm.
Yes.
after Fakir is
Just
done with it,
just
I can give like a small tutorial to LaTeX or how we some of the templates which I find better to use in
at
LaTeX.
the end, at the
At the
end.
end. Or yep. So whenever you guys are comfortable.
Yeah. So basically, I this is a CV, as Saad mentioned when he was talking about CVs. Um, you need to highlight your research interest. This is a CV I made 1 year ago, actually more than 1 year ago when I was applying. Uh, so this I made in August 2019. Um, and I highlighted my research interest over here because this was for a master's in thesis. So I had to tell them what kind of research I was interested in. Then for work experience, I added my research assistantship as well as my teaching assistantship, both in under work experience. Any other tierships that you have? For example, I had a software house at Confiz. I think you all know about it because Sir Zatash is one of the owners. He so I did that as well. And you need to just write very concisely what was your job, what was your role in that particular internship or tiership or whatever it is. And you need to, and in another line you need to write what you got out of it. So two things: what you did and what you got out of it. That's it. And these are the another for the research projects. You need to mention your supervisors. You need to mention exactly the dates that you were working on it. If it's still going on, you need to indicate that it's present. One of the questions was that how do you mention that this particular piece of research is under review at some conference or another. Then you should add a line at the end that that's under review.
But you should talk to
Um,
your co-authors before that.
yes,
Just like
yes, obviously, we don't want any miscommunication, right? So, yes, and I had a research publication, so I have a separate section for that as well. Technical skills could have been avoided. I did not need to include that, but I included it anyway. Extracurricular, you can see that I added my brief, extremely brief term in sci-fi as well to it, and a volunteer work, and any societies that you were part of. And at the end, references. This is very important. You need to add references. As one of them, all three of them are supposed to be basically the people who gave you your reference letters. I think I'll stop sharing now.
Yeah. Just for the references, it's important to highlight, like Fakir had done, that how you are related to the referee. Like, he was your senior
Yes.
year advisor or just a professor that you took a course with. Like, it's important to highlight that. Also, there's a question on Q&A that do you advise putting an exchange program experience in the CV? So for PhD, I think you can put it. You can even highlight what you learned from it. For the master, since you have a page limit, maybe you guys can tell if how important that would be.
Yeah, so one small comment, which is kind of anecdotal. So when I showed my LUM CV to my advisor here, and I also had the word sci-fi in it. So he specifically mentioned that people around the world do not know what the sci-fi is. So you should mention that it is a science Olympiad which is conducted with these many people and has this focus. So that should always be there. I also saw that in some of the locations, Fakir had links put in, which is really nice. So they can directly access the link. You can also use hyperlinks to various stuff. So that's there as well.
You have
The other thing that we saw.
publication add link to that too. If you have a publication, add the link to that too.
Yep. So there was also this final thing. So it was really nice. So in Fakir's CV, the last item was GS Bank, which was internship at a bank. But then she was very meticulous in her wording on how she sort of geared that towards her research, the planning and leadership. So even if you did something tangential, you can sort of play around with the words and make it more aligned with what you're with the people that you're trying to apply with.
And again, this CV was more than a year old. So as you progress, you add new experiences to your CV, and you should keep removing the old ones because it starts to look a bit stale after a while. So keep removing the old ones and start adding the new ones and more जो भी आपके ज़्यादा relevant है वो ज़्यादा पहले आप add करें.
I have one question regarding links. जो हमारी CV होती है उसके अंदर मैं भी hyperlinks डालती हूँ, but वो जब हम CV भेजते हैं, are they going to print that out or are they going to just soft copy के साथ वो interact करते हैं?
They interact with the soft copy because they know that like nowadays hyperlinks are a thing, and honestly most universities are trying to go eco-friendly anyway, so they save paper.
Yeah, I think it depends.
But
Generally, have a hyperlink. Like LinkedIn तो डाला ही होता है सबने generally, if
Yeah.
nothing else.
Yeah.
I mean, but for a PhD CV, I don't think anyone is going to go to your LinkedIn. But
No,
in
but
general,
that there is stuff. The people know that there are hyperlinks in there.
I mean, honestly, I think it depends on the professor. If the
Mm.
professor is someone who is not that tech savvy, or
Mm.
I mean, many people do prefer paper because they like to annotate stuff and all those things. So
No,
it
but
really
you're
depends.
applying to a
But in
computer science
general,
program. The professor is supposed to be tech savvy.
I
I
have seen
mean,
If
professors.
she's not,
you
then
would be
you're not supposed to
surprised
be applying
because
there.
Yep.
you would be surprised because these days I'm attending virtual meetings and people don't know how to attend Zoom meetings.
And there would be faculty in CS. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who still prefer papers
But there's
there.
no harm in adding hyperlinks,
But
even if
in general, yeah, add hyperlinks.
Yeah, and while CV is important and all, I recently talked to the head of my lab. She is a ex faculty from Harvard, and her name is Margot Seltzer, and she's the one who accepted my application for her lab. And she told me that everything is important in your CV, everything is important in your application, but the things that matter the most are your reference letters. So no matter what you do, no matter how much you work, it's going to end up being in the hands of the professors you worked with. So unse bana ke rakho, be diligent in your work, and yeah, don't slack off when it comes to work, when it comes to research projects. So just try to be really diligent in your work. Yeah.
That's great advice. I think most of the questions have been covered. I think we're pretty much covered the resume questions. I think we can move on to SOPs if you guys are done with the samples.
Yeah, I have a few samples but I think we did cover a lot of things. So, but it's still, if you want, I can just share them in a couple of minutes.
If you guys are comfortable, we could share these samples with the attendees later on as well.
So some of
You
those were, so I
can
borrowed
do
them
it.
from my peers who volunteered to give me them, but
You
I
can
can share.
ask if that's completely fine. Okay.
I think we can move on to SOP because I don't know, but for PhD, I feel like SOPs are very, very, very important. So I
I
think we
think that, yeah, it's the same with a master's as well. And I think in the interest of time, we only have around 30 minutes left. So I think we should definitely move on.
Yeah. Just a heads up, our next talk for this event is at 8. So you guys have a घंटे का buffer बीच में, तो if you feel there's something important जो रह रहा है and you just have to speed through, तो इतना मसला नहीं है. I'm pretty sure the participants are fine. If you guys have time, we could extend the session for like 30 more minutes. Who's going to be
so
sharing?
wanna share.
I can share mine. So I see the first slide is me, but then there were also a bunch of slides at the end um, about an SOP for
Yeah.
PhD.
So I guess you can share, and then whoever wants to talk can talk about it.
Um,
थोड़ी
and
सी
so
slides
if
हैं.
any of the panelists wants to like interrupt, so feel free to interrupt, and then if there's anything else that you want to add, just you can add that then.
So I have some slides in the end for PhD SOPs as well. So maybe we can do this, that you go first and then I'll go and then.
Yeah,
Right.
I was going to say that it seems like most of the slides are for PhD SOPs.
Mhm.
I also do masters first, and then I'll try to do it quickly, like maybe in the next 5 minutes, so that you and Aksa have more time for PhD, because I think that's more detailed.
So, and then mine is more of a summary, and Aksa delves into detail. So yeah, we can do that there as well. So,
Okay. You
Start with
don't.
master.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. I will share my screen.
मैं इसको खट नहीं रहा खटता नहीं हो रहा.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Right. So, yeah, let me start off by saying that, like Larry was saying, that personal statements or SOPs are very important for PhD applications. It's just as important for masters. I feel like it's absolutely crucial that your personal state or your SOP, I'm sorry, I use the two interchangeably, but for US universities, it's usually SOP. It's extremely important. And I would say that um, leave at least 7 to 8 weeks if possible for your SOP, because even though writing it, once you have the idea on what to write, and like it's a very honestly speaking, writing an SOP for a grad school is much easier than writing an SOP for undergrad, because the grad school SOP is just explaining essentially what you have done. Like you don't have to be very, like, like very emotional or like sentimental or personal. It's more like, what have you done, why should we take you, why are you interested in our program, that kind of thing. But that said, why I'm saying that leave 7 to 8 weeks is because, let's say if it takes you 1 to 2 weeks to draft your SOP, or like even like a few days, remember that you need to get it edited by a ton of people. I recommend showing it to at least 5 or 6 people, your advisor for sure, but also the alums or like other seniors that you're friends with, because getting more eyes onto it sometimes reveals loopholes that you did not see, or even maybe your peers or your advisor did not see, because they're too close to this work that you have done, so they might not see the questions that other people might have. So remember that when you send these things for editing, people obviously take their time, like they would get back to you in 5-6 days, then you like make the changes that they suggest, and then you send it back. So it's like a long back and forth. Leave 7 to 8 weeks, because also remember that you have multiple SOPs, especially if you're applying to different master's programs. If it's like if you're applying to interdisciplinary ones, or masters in CS in a certain specialty in one place and another specialty in another place, stuff like that. So make sure that you leave enough time. For the structure, it's very straightforward. The trick is that you have to be very eloquent and very precise. You can't go on long rants over here because they're not going to spend more than a couple minutes, 2-3 minutes reading your SOP. At least that's the case with the master's applications. And also, some of the grad schools I applied to did not have a word limit. So that gets a little confusing, but I think a good rule of thumb is a total of maybe 7 to 8 paragraphs, not more. And the paragraph should also, like you should follow the rules of English language. A paragraph cannot be a page long. Yeah, like that's my recommendation, that don't exceed 2 pages, font size 12, single spaced. um, that said, the structure should be that the first paragraph could be a summary of your general area of interest. How I usually like to start my SOP was that I would mention in one line, something that really interested, or I would relate it to either something that really interested me, or I would relate it to a project that I did. That, like while working for this project, etc., etc., etc. Like some overall problem space in the world that I'm interested in. And then I would go on to mention why I am interested in pursuing a master's in that field. Again, 2 to 3 lines. And then the most important line, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is the last sentence of your SOP. And I say this because in my time, I edited at least 15 to 20 SOPs for my friends. And it would really bother me if I have no idea what to expect in their essay. And the last sentence of the first paragraph is where I would like to see, a thesis statement in which you are telling me that, therefore, my experience in this, my project in this, my research in this has prepared me for XYZ. And that's the theme that your entire essay should follow, that each paragraph should be dedicated to a certain project, a certain work experience, TA-ship, whatever it is. Each paragraph should have a theme, preferably one project. But if you have like multiple tiny projects in one area that you want to kind of bunch together because you did not have um, a massively significant contribution in all of them, then one paragraph for them, and then like one paragraph for the most important work experience, etc. One thing I used to do was that I would move my paragraphs around. Make your paragraphs very standalone, right? So like if I have a paragraph related to like the thesis that I did in my undergrad, in some of my master's applications that project was important, so I would put it as like my first paragraph, like after the introductory one. In others it was less important, so I would move it like to the third paragraph or something like that. So again, follow the star method. Again, not necessarily like as STAR, but like just that the situation or the problem that you were trying to solve, the actions that you did to solve it, and the results that you got. This should all be very apparent in that one paragraph. Like if I take a few seconds to skim that paragraph, I should completely understand what you were doing and why. And remember that the person who's reading your essay has no idea about your project. So it's not easy to express it very elegantly in words. And then one thing that's important is that yes, it's cool if you did a project in which you learned a lot or the impact was significant. But what they want to know is that what did you take away from it? That project either led to your learning in a certain space, or you realize that this is something I don't know that well, which is why I want to learn more. And that's totally okay to admit, because when I was at Stanford, like one thing a professor told me was that we get a lot of amazing applications, and sometimes we are just not sure what the candidate wants to learn. Like we have that seat and we want to give it to someone, but we want to take someone good, but we also want to make sure that the person we are taking takes away something from us. So clarifying if you have loopholes in your knowledge, obviously a bit diplomatically, like clarifying those is not at all a bad thing. And I did it in my master's SOPs, that like I worked on this project, it really interested me, but it also made me realize I do not have enough depth in this, which is why I would like to learn more. So yeah, like just end each paragraph related to a project with your personal learning or takeaway from it. And then as in the conclusion, the last paragraph of the essay, again emphasize the area of research you'd like to focus on. It doesn't necessarily have to be area of research, like whatever topic that interests you that you want to focus on in grad school. I personally also mentioned the professors I would like to work with because I was interested. Like most of the projects master's programs I applied to had a master's thesis. So I mentioned the professors I would like to work with, and then what my plans were after grad school. The plans after grad school are obviously like flaky and flimsy, but it's still important to sort of mention that, you know, are you interested in pursuing a certain career, or, you know, like research in a certain thing, something like that. And I think that is the overall structure. But yeah, I cannot emphasize enough the readability of your SOP. It should be very readable. There should be no rants. It should be very, very to the point. And again, I can share an example towards the end if we have time. Otherwise, I can just send it to the admins, and they can share it with you guys. And with that, let me see if there are any questions. I don't think there are. And with that, I think Saad, you can take it away.
All right.
Just a
Kandil,
second.
I have a question.
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
One that Fakya answered online, but maybe you can add to that as well. So that was how should one structure their SOP for if they don't like their research projects. Like if a person did a research project with somebody and they completed the task, but should they fake their enthusiasm? And Fakya has answered it online, but you can add to it if you want.
Let me see the question. So you mean that if you worked on a project but you were not interested in it, how
Yeah,
should one?
like should you fake your enthusiasm?
Oh,
Put
I
it
see.
in the SOP.
Well, that's a good question. I would say, I would say that yes, that is understandable. There could be projects in which you were not really interested or excited, but and I mean, all of us have done projects or work in our life which did not really interest us that much, or we were not like super driven by it. But I would say that there is still something that you learned from it. Some like there's some aspect of learning associated with even like annoying and not so interesting projects. And I want to be really blunt, and I want to say that, you know, honestly, unless you have a lot of other research projects that you could add instead of that one, then go ahead and skip it. But if you do not have a lot of other research projects, and the ones that you have you don't really like, then I would say that spin them in a way that aligns with your interest, because you obviously cannot have an empty SOP or an empty resume, right? So you need to like mention your research projects in some way. But I would say that don't focus on the bits that did not interest you. Like for example, if you did like a networks project and you don't really care about networks that much, you can still spin it and like talk about a certain aspect of it, like maybe in the end, you know, like the statistical analyses that you did or whatever it was, like some aspect of it, like maybe the initial like scoping of the problem or something. You could focus on that, you know, it was really interesting to me when we were like scoping out for that project, and I learned XYZ. You don't have to focus on actually working on that project. But unfortunately, like since undergrad is only 4 years, and the first 2 years we are basically not doing much in terms of projects, there are only 2 years you have for projects, and I don't think you get to do a ton to like have the luxury to pick and choose. So yeah, I think that you can add your spin to it is the best and the most diplomatic way to go about it. Yeah.
There's another question in the Q&A section if you guys want to answer it.
Um,
Yeah, I was just going to write an answer to that. You add it as you would add any other project. Just add one sentence at the end that this work is currently under review in XYZ conference. That's it. And just highlight, just put it in bold, the name of the conference, that it catches the attention of whoever's reading your CV. That's it. That is just it.
Okay, I have one question. Kandil mentioned that the paragraph should be standalone, which makes sense कि readability बढ़ जाती है. तो इसमें I think you guys will explain it better when you have samples. लेकिन how should one go about transitioning between paragraphs in that case?
I think one thing that you can do is that start off by, I mean, let me see if I have an example. But your starting sentence could be that one of the projects in the space of networks that I worked in was something like that. And it is like, I mean, when I say standalone, it's not like you have to copy paste it exactly. Like, sure, you can change the first line a little bit if you think it adds to the flow of the paragraph. But what I say when I mean standalone is that that project, that if I read that paragraph on its own, I should still fully understand the story of that project. I shouldn't have to, read the rest of your essay to understand what happened over there. That's what I meant.
Okay.
But yeah, but your paragraph transitioning, if it helps, let me. Is somebody sharing their screen right now? Okay, it's okay. Yeah, I can show you
Honest.
an example. I can show you an example later. No worries.
Oh
But
no, I stopped sharing my screen. You can go ahead and share your screen.
okay, I'm going to just quickly show you guys something. 1 second. Hmm. Sorry, I'm having.
Here's a question. Any advice for freshmen suffering from senioritis? I don't quite understand what that is. Why are freshmen suffering from senioritis?
Freshmen just take these sessions and they get super anxious. This is for helping you guys
Oh,
out.
if
You
you're
guys
a
have
freshman,
time.
relax. Just relax.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
karo.
time. Just focus on your courses, build up your
Slums.
GPA, that is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let me. Yeah, here you go. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
So this is not my SOP, this is my husband's, but I want to just like highlight the paragraph starting part over here. So basically, over here, like you can see that, for example, this is like a starting sentence. Like the most recent project I was a part of involved working on the hypervisor layer to span this. So like this paragraph is pretty much standalone because this entire paragraph talks about this one project, and I know from the first line what that project is. I know who this person worked with. And over here, ideally, I don't know if he followed the star method or not, but ideally over here it should be like a star method kind of thing where you clarify what the task was and what the action was. And I also think it's very important to use this, like what was your work, like my work, like like focus on what did you work on. And but obviously it's still important to mention what the overall project was, especially if it's a group project, because otherwise like story ki samajh nahi aati ki what was the issue that you were working on. So yeah, this is one example. Similarly, another example for a first sentence is that while working on XYZ, yeah, while interning in whatever, I was a part of this project. This is also a very standalone kind of paragraph, like focus on that one project. And I know from the very first sentence that what to expect in the rest of the paragraph. So like if I read this SOP, I know that, okay, this paragraph is about interest in DS. This paragraph is about hypervisor layer to span a VM. This paragraph is about efficient and resilient data centers, and this paragraph is about like this course's final project related to SDNs. So each, and then finally, like it's a paragraph in which he's concluding by saying who he wants to work with and what he has learned on and why he thinks he would be a good fit for UAUC. So even if I spend 2 to 3 minutes skimming his SOP, I get his story. And that's the kind of thing that your SOP should be, that like just reading, like ऊपर से बस पढूं ना अगर मैं एक दो sentences हर paragraph से, even then I understand what who you are and what you want to learn and what value you will add to our university kind of thing.
That makes sense. Kandil, should we also be adding our soft skills here? Okay, for example, I was the leader of a project, or I was the project manager, or whatever. Like soft
Yeah,
skills के मैंने communication डाली.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and absolutely, I don't think it has to be like an explicit thing. Like like I was the leader of this, but you could totally say that I led a group of 2 people, and we worked on this project. I like I was responsible for this. So like, just like, saying that I led a group of two
Mm.
people, we worked on this, automatically says something about your leadership skills and, like your management skills and all that. um बट आई थिंक या इससे ज़्यादा शायद एक्सप्लिसिट होने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, बिकॉज
Mm.
आपके प्रोजेक्ट्स में खुद ही इम्प्लाइड होता है.
Okay, there's a question in the chat about master's ka SOP.
Do you have to go into great detail about the projects in the SOP? Again, it depends on how much what the word count is for your SOP. Some of the SOPs I wrote, for example, I think it was John Hopkins that said that you could only write 500 words of an SOP. So fitting my 3 pages of SOPs into 500 words was a challenge. Um, so you have to according to that you have to prioritize what you want to add to your recipe and what things will highlight. For example, if you're applying for a interdisciplinary program, then you can add different things to it. If you're applying for a pure CS program, then you have to focus on the skills that are purely CS, and that will help you the most. So, for example, if you have 4 projects and 2 of them are hardcore CS, 2 of them are interdisciplinary, focus on the ones that are hardcore CS for the CS one, and the interdisciplinary ones for any of the interdisciplinary programs that you're applying to. It depends on your word count and the program that you're applying to.
Acha, my question related to projects is if somebody wants to apply for suppose a networks related degree, but they gave a lot and learned a lot from a software engineering related project, suppose should they also put their software engineering project, suppose fourth or fifth project, you say, because it's not relevant to the field, but it taught them a lot. So should they mention such projects as well?
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
um,
I
if you
think
have space, because you
Okay.
you will not be adding 4 to 5 projects in your SOP. You will be adding at most 3 projects in your SOP. You should not, if you go on to mention 4 or 5 projects, you will not be able to do justice to any of them. So
That makes sense.
Maybe what you can do is, so after mentioning the 2 or 3 top projects that you worked on, put a paragraph at the end, a shorter paragraph in which you dump all the other projects and to sort of
yeah.
mention specific skills that you learned from them.
But
Okay.
I think the key takeaway, Anusha, like if your question, if I heard it correctly, you said that if you learned a lot from it and if your contribution was a lot, then I think it definitely needs to go into like, like even if it's a third or fourth paragraph, unless you have other projects which are relevant and you also had an equal amount of
Hmm.
contribution and learning. Because if you're like expressing interest in networks and you have like maybe one big project and then like a couple other tiny ones, and then you have a really good software engineering project, I would say that the tiny network projects in which you didn't really do much or didn't really learn much, they could even like come a little later, like it's or like as a second paragraph or something. Because what I would try, like I'm not like, if they're not hiring people for a job, right, like they don't want to see कि अच्छा हम आपको networks में ले रहे हैं, आपको networks already आते हैं या नहीं. They're taking you because they know that you don't know networks that much, which is why you're applying for grad school, right, because you want to gain depth. But what they want to see is that how great of a learner you are, how like how efficient you are, like how hardworking you are and all. And I think if you have like a meaty project in which you learned a lot, contributed a lot, and that project was really good, then I think I would be more impressed by that rather than having a project that was related to networks, but you didn't really do much or didn't really learn much, and it was just like an average project. Then I would just be like, yeah, okay, sure. I mean, she's trying to tick the boxes for networks, but what did she really do in
Hmm.
it? So,
That makes
um,
sense.
yeah, like अपने मीटी प्रोजेक्ट्स जो हैं जिनमें आपने बहुत ज़्यादा काम किया था वो काफ़ी ज़रूरी होते हैं.
Okay. Hira has a question.
So there's a question that for interdisciplinary programs, let's suppose that I want to go for a program in healthcare analytics. How much should I focus on experience like being in an EMS and the sort of learning and inspiration I get from that? got from there. So just to answer that very briefly, and people can add to it, that anything that inspires you and that is directly linked to your field of interest, you can put it in your SOP, and you can say that, oh, this was a great inspiration for me, but don't like write a whole paragraph on it. Like the SOP can have a bit of personal stories, but not like too much storytelling. You can add a sentence about it maybe, and but don't like delve into it. Okay, oh, when I was 2 years old, I started doing this and then this and then this, and eventually led to this. So write like one or two sentences about what inspires you.
Yeah, and I
Yes,
think that
I agree with that.
this is an ideal start to an essay. Like अगर आप health care analytics या health tech में जाना चाह रहे हो, then and you also want to start your essay with like something that is a little more personal as to why you're interested, because you obviously did your undergrad in a CS which is not directly related to healthcare necessarily. So I think it's a great way to start your essay on a personal and relevant note. And but I second Larib that it doesn't have to be like a ton of detail, or you don't have to dedicate an entire paragraph, but just a couple of liners, like a couple of lines in the beginning of your essay should do the trick. But I think it is definitely important to say this because it totally makes your SOP more relatable to the reader as a human. कि आपको अचानक से क्यों interest हुआ. And always remember that in interdisciplinary programs, just saying कि हाँ यार मैंने पूरी ज़िंदगी CS किया लेकिन ना अब मुझे education की बड़ी feel आ रही है या अब मुझे healthcare की बड़ी feel आ रही है. Like sure, yeah, it could totally happen, but they also want to know okay, what did you do about it? Like you're interested in it, we understand that. How did you pursue your interest already? Like you can't just say कि मुझे feel आई तो अब मैं directly masters में apply करने लगा हूँ और लगी हूँ. But you have to be like, I really got interested in this, and in order to pursue it, like I did XYZ. You joined EMS. Maybe you did like a class project which was related to health tech or something. But you have to build on it a little bit. So these extracurriculars totally build that story.
There's another question that says that the project was halfway done when I joined it. How should I mention it in my SOP? Is it okay to write that I joined in late and have worked only on some aspects of it? Don't write that you joined in late. Explain the project in a sentence or two, what the project is really about, and then write that these are the aspects that I worked on. Don't say that you joined in late. Don't mention that. Just highlight the aspects that you worked on after explaining in a sentence or two what the entire project is about.
Yeah. So to add to that, no project starts from like isolation. It does have starts from somewhere. So you don't need to mention that you started late or had. Be confident in your choice of words if you worked on the
Yes.
project.
Just highlight your contributions. Everybody knows that there are group projects and every person has different contributions. So highlight what you did and what you gained from it.
So what about us hopeless people who neither have projects, not a good GPA, no research? It depends on which year you are in. If you are still a junior, there is tons of hope. You can start working on research projects right now. Reach out to professors, do internships. There's still a lot of time. If you are a senior, again, just start working on research right now and maybe consider taking a gap year.
He's a senior. He or she is a senior.
Okay, then consider taking a
You can
gap
always,
year. You can still
consider
apply,
taking.
definitely still apply, and it will be a good experience for you. Apply, and if you don't get in where you want to go, then you can always take a gap year. Other than that, you can just and focus on research. It depends on where you want to go. If you want to do a master's right now, if you want to do a master's, then a GPA will matter, and you should focus on internships or even a job. If you're graduated, you can get a job. If not, try to do research projects
I
for
want to
PhD,
add something.
master's, and thesis. Yes.
So if you are applying for masters, I'm not sure research experience is it matters that much.
Yeah.
So if you have taken advanced courses and you have good projects to show in them, like maybe some computer graphics project, because these projects are usually not that every student in the class is doing the same project. It's like every team decides their own project and works on it, you can highlight those. Other than that, I would not say definitely still apply, because applying is expensive. So you should maybe talk to your advisors and have a clear-cut, honest talk with them. I mean, I'm not even sure if you have approached any professor. You should definitely approach any professor. You should not care, okay, I don't have good GPA, they will not treat me well. They would think, oh, why is he even considering applying? You should not think of those things. Whatever professor you feel you can connect to, you can honestly talk to, just go to them, they would help you. And honestly have this conversation that should you apply? Or even you can, if you want, you can share your CV or whatever you have done so far with us, and we can help you in deciding if you should apply right now or not, or if you take a gap year and actually build your profile. And then when you are building your profile, if you're applying for masters, you don't really have to do research. You can go for a good internship or maybe a job. That entirely depends on what you want to do later.
Yeah, if you want to do
After,
a
how do
master's,
we?
job experience really counts. Like I know people जो 1-2 साल job करके masters करने जाते हैं, and that really helps. There's a question in a gap year, how do we do research? So for that, you can talk to professors. Like talk to professors in the CS department, especially like anybody you want to, any field that you want to pursue, and request them to let you work with them for a year. Also, to add to that, if you have research experience, the CGPA it matters, but not so much. Like if you have really good references and good research experience, at least for PhD, sometimes people can ignore the CGPA if it's not like 1.1. I mean, if it's somewhere in the middle, people can go like, okay, it's okay. Yeah.
I mean, yes, but there you have to choose your schools accordingly. I mean, if
Yeah,
you're
because
applying
there's
to
a
Ivy
cutoff.
League, if you are going to apply to Ivy Leagues, they're going to have a 3.8 cutoff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to choose accordingly and see. I mean, most of the research groups, and actually, when you're applying for PhD, don't go for the ranks, go for the group. Whichever professor is publishing at top conferences that you think you can work with, has a good research group, you should apply there. You should not think too much about, oh, this is not a very top ranked university.
Yeah, and start looking for professors early.
I mean, there is actually, you should talk to some professor in CS right now at LUMS, and you should, I mean, whichever field you want to join. For instance, if you want to join networks, maybe talk to Dr. Isan, and he will let you know which groups are in general active right now, which groups. I mean, like, for instance, Northeastern is not a very well ranked university in networks, but it's actually publishes quite actively and it has a very good group. So these kind of applying to these kind of universities increase your chance of getting in and actually doing good research.
I think I can personally volunteer to share some of the research groups that are actively recruiting in my fields, and other panelists can also do that. I think that would be very useful as well. So you can reach out to us to specifically ask. Just mention your research interest. We can tell you which of the research groups are sort of recruiting.
Yeah, most professors usually write that they are taking students, but if they haven't and you don't really know, then you should judge by the size of their PhD group. If they
Yeah.
have too many students already, don't apply. Like by too many, I mean greater than 7.
Yeah.
Because
There's a question that is it too. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's okay. I'm done.
Okay. Sorry. So there's a question: is it too late to reach out to research groups and professors? No, it's not. Send them an email. You're sending in your applications right now. Ideally, you send them an email around the same time you send your application, so that they can look at it side by side, so that they know, like, who's this person and what did they send to. So it's not too late to reach out. Also, don't be disappointed if professors don't reply. A majority of them don't get back to you, but they do see your email and they do see your application. So sending out emails is not a bad idea. And then there's this question that provided that, does anybody want to add to that? Okay. So the
Larib,
next question,
there's a question addressed directly to you, Larib.
I'll type an answer to that online. Just wait for that. So the other is that we're going to apply for PhDs based on research groups. What if we end up changing interest later and find out there isn't a good research group working? on our newly found area of research at our chosen university. What should we do? I think that's pretty far into the future. So if you're somebody at that point, there are options like you can change universities or groups, but I think that would require a more personalized view as to what you want to do, how you want to switch. Um, and there are options for that. So I have a lot of friends who have changed either their fields or changed like moved from PhD to other areas, and there are possibilities for that. So it's nothing to worry about.
Um, I just quickly wanted to say that I have to drop off now, but I really hope that I was able to help. And all the best to you guys with the applications, and happy to help in the future as well in case there were any questions that were unanswered or if there's any other way in which I can help. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Kandil.
Bye,
You've been
guys.
really, really helpful. I would just like to add that a lot of people are messaging me personally as well that they want to connect with you guys after this talk. हम Slack channel बनाएंगे and we'll share the link with all the panelists as well as the attendees. So if
Yeah,
anybody wants to volunteer to help, you guys can join there. Thank you so much, Kandil. This has been
sounds
really, really
perfect.
helpful. Personally
Thank
as well,
you.
I was really confused about this.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Okay, Allah Hafiz.
We
Bye.
haven't gone through PhD SOP yet,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of those questions were covered. I don't know how should
I
we.
think you
Yeah.
can quickly open it if you
Let me
want.
just give a brief
Yeah.
Yeah,
overview
I
of.
can do that as well, Aksa, whatever you prefer. So you can do that.
I mean, up to you. What do you?
Uh,
Actually, let's budget this. Let's take five minutes each, and then.
I can provide a overarching summary, and then you can delve into specific details.
Okay. Okay. Sure. You're muted.
Okay, so what I was saying was the first paragraph of your PhD. So PhD SOPs are very important, and then your first paragraph of your PhD SOP should sort of serve as a trailer for your entire SOP, entire length of SOP. But it should not be very narratable. So it should not be like stories. It should be to the point, but you have to make it engaging and also summarize your plans in that one paragraph, so that even if someone reads that only the starting paragraph, they can get to know about their research interests, a small summary of your research experience, and also just why you got interested in applying to that place. So the first paragraph is very important, and it serves as a trailer for your entire application. That's one. The next thing that I wanted to cover about when you're talking about projects in those body paragraphs for each of the different projects, it should not just be a summary of the project itself. I think whoever was talking about the master's application also pointed this, but for PhD, it's particularly important that you do not provide like an abstract of the entire research. It should be more than that. How and why you got interested into the project, what were the roadblocks or research challenges that you faced. So be very specific with the roadblocks or research challenges that you faced and how you overcame them. That's also important. You can show off the effective use of different research methods in the field and the tools that you use while working on this project. It's also very important that what you learned in that project, so just put a sentence or two about what you learned and how that learning improved you as a researcher, as an independent researcher, independent being a very key word here, that allows you to do research on your own later on. So that's also important. You should also mention one sentence about the outcomes or where the project is right now. And if you're sort of pursuing a publication, if you're published it, just mention that a paper or a poster for this has been published at this venue. If you want to pursue in the future, there could be a couple of options. If you know the conference, mention that we would want to publish it at XYZ conference in the future. If the obviously if the date is somewhere in the future and not has not passed, or you can just mention that we would want to publish it in a top venue in that specific research domain. So that's there. I think Aksa will go over this more, but I briefly went through some of the points. Then you can also put like a shorter paragraph towards the end to sort of summarize some of the other projects and things that piqued your interest in that specific line of research. But don't like, so just mention something, don't mention something for the sake of mentioning it. They can find it in your resume as well if it's something that's very small. But if it sort of contributes towards some particular aspect or makes you better as an independent researcher, sure, you can put a shorter paragraph at the end in which you summarize all these projects. You should also talk about your teaching experience, I feel, but then it should not be that I tiered this course, this is what was being taught in the course. You should go beyond that. You should go beyond your experience of taking the course and mention the things that you sort of learned while you were doing doing the tiership as well. And you should also gear it towards academia, so sort of use this to show your interest in academia, because with PhD the intent is to in most cases is to pursue a position in academia later on. So you should showcase or show off your interest in academia in this as well. Then the last two things that I wanted to point out, so you should definitely mention in most cases the lab or professors that you want to work with. These should not be too many. You cannot just make a long list of like 5, 6, 7 professors. I would want to work with this if there's a large group. Be specific, put like one at max three. I wouldn't even suggest putting three. One or two is good. Mention the research group so that you know so that they know that this person has already looked us up and sort of know what's the overarching line of research in the lab. Do look at their website, do look at all the people who are working there. You can even reach out to some of the students if the professor is not replying, uh, and sort of mention that how their line of how your research that you have done makes you a good fit for that particular research group or that particular professor. And again, look at their recent research. Don't look at their research that has happened like 10 years in the past or 15 years in the past. With that said, so in the closing paragraph, I feel like you can afford to be a bit informal, because generally all of this would be extremely formal. So you can talk about the university at large, how that sort of, so that's something that you want to end up with. You can talk about location. You can talk about other slightly informal stuff as well, because I mean a lot of that is important too. Like while applying, we do consider those things as well, and they do know that some of the things are, so for instance, if you're a city person, you can mention the university being at the hub of a city where there's a lot around, sort of piques your interest in the university as well. If you want to go somewhere else, like out of the city, and upstates or somewhere else, you can mention that as well, but keep it very short. And in the last paragraph, everything before that should be to the point but engaging. So yeah, that was a quick summary
Yeah.
of
Can you go to the general do's and don'ts, and we can quickly go over that before Aksa goes into details? Yeah. So these are some general do's and don'ts, and Saad has highlighted some of them, and we have talked about a lot of them. But I just want to say, start early. Kandil highlighted that start 7 weeks early because you do want to do multiple iterations. Do multiple iterations of the SOP and review with several people, like your seniors, your definitely your advisor. Don't hesitate going to other instructors. I was very hesitant, for example, going to Dr. Ihsan, and one of my friends was like, no, you should go to him. And I was like, मैंने कभी सलाम के अलावा कुछ किया ही नहीं है डॉक्टर ihsan के साथ, like no work, no courses. And then he emailed him, okay, my friend is going to come, and I did go. And it took him like 10 minutes to go over my SOP, and he gave me some really good advice on it. So, respect the other people's time, but don't don't hesitate asking for reviews from random people. Keep it very, very short and precise, be to the point. So generally 1.5 pages and about 1,000 words, less than 1,000 words, ideally 800 words. Keep the formatting clean, make sure you have that, keep it very, very clean. Use scientific terminology. Generally for PhD SOPs especially, don't be afraid to be very, very specific, because जो लोग SOP पढ़ेंगे उनको पता है कि आपने क्या काम करना है और आप किस फील्ड में हो, so they'll understand what you're saying. And again, carry a hard copy with you. That really helped me. I would just like walk with some professor and ask them to review SOP, and they would read over it and give me very good thank you for the spelling mistake, and they would be like, okay, I'll review it for you. So carry a hard copy with you. Don't copy paste someone's SOP. We might share templates with you, but do not copy paste. That's a horrible, horrible idea to copy paste, especially because LUMS के लोग दोबारा same universities में apply करते हैं, and they look at an SOP and they go like, oh, ye to humne pehle bhi dekhi bhi hai. So never do that, and avoid storytelling. I've gone over that. Avoid too much storytelling. Like if something inspired you, of course, put that in, but don't do too much storytelling. Saad, can you go 2 slides below? So this is something from my SOP, and you guys can read it later if you have the slides. But like I said, I applied to 2 sessions, and there was a 6-month gap, and the major updates I did were to my SOP. And if you read over this, you'll see what the changes are. Pehle SOP mein I was just talking about the project, what the project was, what the science was. I had no idea of like what I contributed to it, what I learned from it, and all of that. So, like do that, and if the people will have access to this, they can read over this and see the differences. So definitely put in what you learned, what you contributed, and how this is going to help you in the future. I think that's absolutely crucial to add to your SOP. And we'll share samples later on. And if there's anything anybody wants to add, or like we can continue talking about this.
I
Do
have a
you want to add
question.
anything?
Yeah.
Asad mentioned that TA-ships are like a good thing to add on your PhD SOP. Does that also apply to masters? Work experience, internship, anything like that, or should we just let that stay on the resume?
So yeah, Fakia, maybe you can answer that.
If you're really, again, I'll mention the length of the SOP. If you're really strapped for the length, then you can choose not to mention it. What I did was for the ones that were 1 page long, I just added 3-4 lines at the end, in the second last paragraph, which I mentioned my volunteer work and my TA-ship. So it was just like 3-4 sentences, but I did mention it.
Okay.
Saad, can you go to my slides?
Sure. Which one?
Yeah, this.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a general outline for each paragraph of the SOP. So basically, for the your first paragraph is the most important because the person is going to decide if I should read further or not. So it should give a teaser of your SOP, that what the professor should expect later in the paragraphs. For instance, here you should mention your research interests. Why do you have this research interest? And avoid saying things like, "Oh, I was born with this," or "From the age of 10, I have been very fond of cycles and stuff." Okay. Here you should say something like, how do you know this is your research interest? One thing could be that you took courses in it and you read some research papers. I mean, there are many courses in CMU which go through many research papers to the field, and you can just say that I took this course and I read relevant literature and I found it really interesting and I want to explore further. Or you could say something like, I did projects in this field and I learned a lot and I want to explore further. If you have any publications, this is a place, mention it in 1 or 2 sentences. And after this, I mean, mention the good courseworks, your good projects that are very, very related to your project in just 1 line, especially if they have a publication or if they're under review. And after this, the person will decide, okay, should I read further? So then after that, Saad, can you go to the next slide? So for your paragraph number 2, 3, and 4, it should be about your 3 projects. And it should be relevant to the projects. When you're choosing which project to mention first, it should be chosen on these 3 metrics. One is that which project is more relevant to the program you're applying to. What is the significance of your contribution in terms of how much material you have to write about? Like, I did this, I learned this. And then what was the outcome of the project? When I say outcome, you should talk about maybe quantitative impact, or is it under review, or has it been published? and all those things. And also someone asked that what should we do if we intend to publish it, but we haven't submitted it anywhere? Then I would say you should mention that you intend to submit it here, but upload the draft of the paper on archives and say, here is an earlier version of the project. So that it gives you some sort of backing that, okay, this person is not just saying for the sake of saying that, okay, I'm going to publish it here, I'm going to submit it here. It gives you some backing that, okay, this person has actually a reasonable draft that this person can submit somewhere. And then can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So for each project, it's similar to the STAR method, but I just don't. I wasn't familiar by the time I wrote my recipe of the STAR method. So briefly explain the goal. What was the project? What were the techniques used in solving the problem? Here the techniques could be, any, let's say you use linear regression kind of thing, or these kind of things. You just mention that, give a brief teaser of the solution, but do not it shouldn't be, you're not motivating the problem to the professor. You are not selling the project, you are selling yourself. So don't be like, okay, this is a very great idea and this is how miraculously and beautifully we aim to solve it. Try to sell yourself, okay, this is the problem, this is the solution, and then delve into your contributions. What did I do? And then there you have to use the word I did. Do not use passive voice. You have to say actively that I did this, I implemented this. And you can talk about not sure about programming languages, because you're a CS person and programming languages are not something you should highlight here, because I don't think it will do much for your PhD. Maybe let's say if you are in networks, you can say, okay, I worked with network NS2, network simulator. Or if you are in security, maybe you can say, I have worked with GDB debugger, I have worked with LLVM and all those things. Then after that, you should, previous slide. You should talk about what stumbling blocks you had in your research. Like, was there a point in the project that you thought that, okay, now we have hit a roadblock? And that is where your learning comes in. That is where you can highlight, okay, what did I learn from this stumbling block? Maybe you did some preliminary experiments, you didn't get very good results. And then you can say that, okay, now what did you learn from there and how did you overcome this? So these are the things a person will really be interested in. And after that, you should just mention in a sentence that if it has been published somewhere, if it has been published in a very good conference, then you should maybe highlight the accept rate of the conference, if it's maybe less than 25%. And then for the next paragraph, which is your paragraph number 5, here you basically answer the question, why PhD? And the first, it's always hard to answer these questions because most of the times you would also not know why PhD. It's just like, okay, I think I can do it, I enjoyed it, let's see. You are always in that state. So there you would, but you don't want to tell that uncertainty to the person who is reading it. So there you want to highlight that, okay, I have research experience. So from that research experience, I learned this thing, that this is what research entails. And I know that I can solve these, I can overcome these roadblocks, or basically, the challenges of research. If you know that, that is enough to convince the person that, yes, you can do a PhD. The next thing is, why this particular field? Why computer networking? Why not computer graphics? Why not computer vision? Why not security? And there you can say that, okay, this wasn't like the first thing I started working on and I thought that, no, this is going to be the last thing I'll be working on. You should be like, I took advanced courses in these many fields. Or maybe here you can mention a diversity of the projects you did, that maybe I did this project in computer graphics, I did this project in HCI, very, very briefly. Maybe in less than, like, you should mention 2-3 project names you don't even have to tell what the exact project was. You just say that I have taken advanced courses in this field. I have done projects in them. And then you say that after getting this experience, I think that computer networks is what I'm really interested in, or security is what I'm really interested in. And then tell you also why PhD. A portion of why PhD is also because it aligns with your future goals, how you see yourself maybe in 10 years. So here you can say that if you want to join academia, you can say that because I want to join academia, I have to do a PhD. It makes your why PhD very easy to logic with, Otherwise, if you're saying that, oh, I want to join industry, then it gets kind of tricky there, because then you don't really need PhD to go to industry. Then you have to maybe say other things like, I want to, I mean, you can reason about maybe you want to learn more in this field, and these kind of things. I mean, what I'm saying is that if you are not really sure about your future plans and they do not align with PhD, then it's fine if you don't mention it here. I mean, let's say, do not write it that I may end up doing software engineering, but I don't know, kind of thing, because then this might give this hint to the professor that maybe this person is going to leave after masters. And then the last paragraph should be why this university. This could be very informal, like Saad mentioned, that I chose this university because it's, let's say, it's highly ranked, or its research group is very nice, or this research group publishes in top conferences, or I really like their work. And when you mention that I'm interested in these professors, you should look at those professors, look at their recent projects, and you should say that I am interested in this kind of work that they're doing. For instance, if a professor is working on maybe, I don't know, improving video quality for streaming services, so you should mention that this is the particular project I'm interested in, because that gives the professor the hint that, okay, you have looked at their projects and this is what you really like. It's not a blind, oh, you picked top 3 professors in a particular university and then you just wrote their names. No, you should, I mean, this paragraph will be custom for each university. And also do not make this mistake of sending another university a paragraph with another university's name. I know people who have done this. Do not do this mistake. Go through, you should know before what are the requirements of each particular university before you start writing your recipe. You should have a list of these are the various universities I want to apply to. This is what their recipe requirements are. You should know your word limit. You should know if there are any particular header or footers they want in the SOP, what are their, sometimes they do talk about, okay, maybe I want to, tell what your SOP should mention. Sometimes universities mention that we want to know your personal experiences as well. So then you have to tailor your recipe. So this is something you need to know before you start writing and before you start targeting. And also, yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, so there's a question that said, if a professor hasn't replied to your email, is it advisable to mention them in the SOP? I sent an email to the professor I wanted to work with. He did not reply. He is my advisor now. They do read your emails. It's just that they can't reply to each email that they get. So yes, it is advisable to mention them in the SOP if you are actually interested in what they're doing.
And yeah, so professors are very busy at times. So they might be attending conferences, they might be doing other stuff. So they might not reply to their email. So just look for one thing that on their website, does it say whether they are recruiting students? Try looking at their website, because oftentimes what happens is that if you go to the university website, they might be listed in the PhD faculty, but they already have all their position filled or do not have any new offering. So just try to find out if they are taking any new student there as well. You may reach out to some of the students in their lab to sort of check with them if they are taking any students. So that's another channel that you can use as well. But yeah, you should definitely mention the professor's name in the lab in any case.
Okay, I think there aren't many questions. Are we done with the slides?
Yeah, I think we're done here.
Okay. Any if anybody has a question, just leave it down right now because then we can otherwise we can wrap up. Where we've asked you guys a whole lot of questions already. So
Think a
uh
few other things, just general comments in a minute that I would like to say. So while applying, do consider other factors as well. So जब हम apply कर रहे होते हैं, we're often in the rat race of just getting in somewhere or a few places. But there are also other factors which might seem trivial at the time of applying, which are very important. Like something as trivial sounding as वहाँ ठंड कितनी पड़ती है. Like Larry would agree. So somewhere in upstate, it goes down to -15, -20. If you're not comfortable with that, don't come here. On the opposite side, if you're not comfortable with Florida's heat or like down there, don't go there as well. Also, other
And
things
if
matter.
you're like if you're not comfortable living alone or like isolated, try to find universities closer to cities. Like my
Exactly.
husband did a PhD in a place जहाँ पे like barely कोई लोग थे, and he
Hmm.
made it through, but it's hard for a lot of people. And so like choose wisely. Don't
Yeah.
just try to
Yeah,
like especially
actually,
for PhDs, it's a really long time to
Hmm.
spend. So don't let that be a factor.
Yeah.
yeah, and I was someone who underestimated this thing because people you gave me the same advice that okay, location is important, you should think accordingly. But I was like, no, I got into CMU. I mean, Pittsburgh is not a very big city. It's not very, I would say, I mean, if you, I've lived in Lahore before, and Lahore is like at even 2 a.m. in the night, you will see people outside. And here at 7 p.m., you won't see anyone outside. So these
And
kind of things do matter. I struggled. So
yeah, if you know people in those areas, talk to them about like the social life, if food is something that you're concerned about, like ask about that, kya khane and everything. So these are a lot of factors that you should consider. To answer Khizr's question, how many, it's sort of related to how many universities should we typically apply to. So it's expensive, like Anil said, applying is expensive, so depending on your financial limits you should decide as well. But I think people recommend applying at least 8 to 10 universities, जिसमें से एक या दो top notch, then there's some middle rank universities, and then there's some like sort of backup choices for you. So divide it like that and apply to about 10. But of course, if you have financial constraints, change that list. If you want to apply to more, feel free to do that. There's no harm, but use your time and your money wisely. Sad, you were saying
Yeah,
something,
and
sorry.
I think I didn't have anything to say. Like general comments. Pake, you can go ahead.
yeah, so I was going to say that before applying, just ask yourself, if I get into this university, will I be able to attend or will I want to attend? Because it sometimes happens that you get into a university and then later you realize कि oh मेरे पास तो funding ही नहीं है, मुझे तो funding ही नहीं मिली इसके लिए. तो and you, or sometimes just like that the temperature यहाँ पे -24 पे जाता है, मैं तो यहाँ रह ही नहीं सकती. I'm allergic, I have allergies, I can't do this. So just ask yourself before applying, before spending those $80 or $100 and plus $35 to send your GRE to them as well, that अगर मुझे acceptance आ गई यहाँ से तो मैं यहाँ पे जाऊंगी भी कि नहीं जाऊंगी. So yeah, first do that
Yeah.
and sort out your finances
There's another
beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, there's another question on a similar note. Is it manageable financially to do a PhD if you have a spouse? I know people who have done it. I'm not gonna lie, it's not smooth sailing. It's not easy. PhD stipend बहुत कम होता है. But I know people who have done it. It also matters a lot what place you're at, क्योंकि कुछ जगहों पे जिस तरह rent बहुत ज़्यादा होता है. If you're applying to a city, the rent is crazy. Your stipend is not adjusted accordingly. I lived in Stony Brook. I paid for a shared room as much money as my husband paid for a whole apartment. तो जगह से बहुत ज़्यादा फर्क पड़ जाता है. But like I said, I know people who have done it, and they did it really, really well. It's just that you have to manage your finances better, and it is a constraint. Not going to lie about that. In PhD, it is a constraint, but it's definitely doable if you want to. Yeah.
Yeah,
Another
and
Thank
everyone
you,
heads up.
should
So
guys.
work nowadays. Actually, it's bad economy, guys. Everyone should work. Everyone should
yeah.
have a job.
Also, a heads up. So if there's a spouse or someone that you even while getting your I-20, you have to show your finances. From what I remember, you have to show your finances that you have the ability to fund your spouse for 3 or 4 years. So and also their health insurance. So there's that as well to keep in mind.
Yeah, so you have to mention that. And okay, sorry, I forgot I was going to say something.
Guys, I have to drop off. I just wanted to
Yeah,
say that.
Aksa, can you turn on your camera for a bit? हमने बस end पे ना हम एक तस्वीर लेते होते हैं panelists के साथ, if
Okay,
that's
sure.
fine with you. We can just end after that. Marina, are you taking? Ready? एक
वो मैं उसके ऊपर स्क्रीन के ऊपर वो फुल स्क्रीन वाला
अच्छा. Okay, 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay, thank you guys. Okay, we've gone I think an hour over limit, but this has been really really helpful. मैंने आज सुबह एक draft लिखी थी, and my draft is total garbage now after this talk. I need to do it all over again. But thank you so much. This was really really helpful. And yeah, we still have questions coming, but we can't take them because 20 minutes में next talk है हमारी. We will definitely connect you guys with the panelists. They've been super super helpful, and I'm pretty sure अब इन लोग इन सब ने मिलके आपको SOPs भेजनी है, so you heads up for you guys. And thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for the slides. If that it's okay with you guys, can we share these with the attendees?
Sure. Yeah.
If it's fine with you guys. चलें सही है. Thank you, Fakia, Saad. Kandil isn't here, but Kandil virtually. Lareb and Aksa, you guys have been a big, big help. And I've said it again publicly, एक और दफा कह देती हूँ, LUMS has the best alumni network out there. And you guys have proved that once again. Thank you so much.